Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
So I went to bed last night. It's about 11 o'clock out here on the left coast. That's 2 o'clock Eastern. And everything was quiet. And I stayed up an additional half hour waiting to see if there's any breaking news. I mean, 10:30 West Coast time, 1:30 East Coast time, and there was nothing. Woke up. It was I went to bed very, very peaceful. And I wake up to all hell breaking loose. I said, is this ever going to end? Is there ever going to be a normal day again? No. Talking about the hurricane, that's actually going well. Did you see that they have restored 1.4 million people back to power last night? FPL apparently is making great progress in restoring power. Remember, they said it's going to be out for maybe months. Now, I know you know why they do that. They do it on purpose. They get it back in weeks. It's wow, just like we're doing now. But they really are. That's fantastic. There's 2.6 million still without power out of a little over 6 million. So they are they're really moving fast. And, you know, Trump did an appearance down there today. He went down, flew down to Fort Myers. He's meeting victims and governor. I mean, everybody down there is just really doing a bang-up job. There were trucks, power people, contractors, tree and landscapers just waiting for this storm to get out of there and drive south into South Florida, and they've arrived, and they've begun their work, and that's up. I mean, that's an upper. That's a positive thing. Thanks to all of those people that are, and they're going to get paid. I mean, this is commerce at work here. Pelosi calls it triple down. Anyway, so I wake up today, and all hell is breaking loose. And, you know, I wade through it. I do not knee-jerk reaction to anything, particularly when the drive-by media is involved. When the drive-by media and the Democrat Party are involved in setting a narrative every day, writing the script for the soap opera, I'm sorry, folks, I am immediately suspicious. I am not fatalistic. I'm not a pessimist by nature, except in a few things, and I'm not going to tell you what those are, but certainly not this. So I hustled and got out of the hotel, and I raced in here to start trying to make sense of things. So when I got up, the news was that Trump had caved on the wall. That Trump at dinner with Chuck and Nancy last night had caved on the wall. And then I saw that a lot of people, Trump voters, Trump supporters, believed it. And we're saying, that didn't take long. It's not even October, and Trump has already sold us out. I understand people have been sold out so many times voting for Republicans that they're conditioned to being sold out. And so they just figured this Trump thing may be too good to be true. And Chuck and Nancy, first they make a deal on the debt ceiling and spending, and Trump's praising them and praising it. And Mitch and Paul are over there fuming if they've been sold out and been thrown under the bus. And this thing comes along, and everybody's just fatalistic about it and thinking that it's over. But I stop and I ask myself, would Trump really do this? Does Trump not know how he would blow up the entire support base he has by making a deal with Chuck and Nancy and taking the wall off the table while granting amnesty to anybody? I don't care if it's children, if it's seasoned citizens. And I'm asking myself, would Trump really do that? Is he that? Fill in the blank. But a lot of people do think it. A lot of people did think it, and right there pushing that narrative is the drive-by media. And certain Republicans are helping that narrative be pushed. They think that Trump caved to Chuck and Nancy on the wall. So I came in here and I started digging deep. And I said to myself, don't get caught up in this. What you need to do is just chill. So I started looking into things, and we've got, a mountain of things to go through. But I'm going to tell you what Trump just said a few moments ago on the tarmac in Florida when he and Melania and his team landed in Florida. a tweet. We have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing. And then a tweet came 25 minutes later from Fox Business. Wealthy Americans are not my priority. My priority are people in the middle class, and that's where we're giving tax relief. That's another thing that blew up yesterday when I got back to the hotel after the program yesterday, and I'm deluged with messages from people. Well, we were played. Trump's talking about raising taxes on the rich now, and that's the only reason I voted for. I mean, deluged. I had more people reacting to that than I have people reacting to me anyway on this Chuck and Nancy deal with the wall. So that's something we'll put off to the side. We'll come back to the tax business, because that's a fundamental issue as well. There is a pretty good summary of events here that goes like this. Chuck and Nancy claimed after a dinner at the White House with the president that a deal had been done on granting amnesty to the DACA kids, the Dreamers. They're not kids anymore. Not all of them. 30% of them have reportedly committed criminal acts, some felonies. Chuck and Nancy said that Trump had agreed to enshrine protections for 800,000 illegal immigrants, the Dreamers, in a border security package excluding the wall. Remember something, folks. The media's primary task since the inauguration has been to separate you, if you are a Trump supporter, from Trump. That has been their objective. They're smart enough to know that if they can't destroy Trump, that only Trump can. Where have we heard that before? Only Trump can destroy Trump. They can't. They've been trying. They know they can't. So they've been trying to drive a wedge between you, Trump supporters, and Trump. So if Chuck and Nancy come out and say, we got a deal, amnesty for the kids, and Trump said to hell with the wall, and media reports it, all hell breaks loose. Meanwhile, Trump's in their White House, whatever he's doing, not even aware this is going on until after the fact. The White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders Huckabee, said there was no agreement on the wall during the meeting, which puts the ball back in the court for Chuck and Nancy, who said not only was there a deal, but that Trump had thrown in the bonus that he didn't care about the wall right now. Huckabee Sanders said, nope, no agreement. Trump said the same thing in his tweets this morning. No deal was made last night on DACA. Massive border security would have to be agreed to in exchange for consent. It would be subject to a vote. He then tweeted a follow-up message. The wall, which is already under construction in the form of new renovation of old and existing fences, and walls will continue to be built. And then Trump pushed Congress to pass legislation protecting the immigrants, but said he wanted big, that's in all caps, big border security. As he left the White House to go out to the helicopter to chopper over to Air Force One to go down to Florida, Trump admitted that he was fairly close to reaching a deal with Chuck and Nancy that excluded the wall, and that the Republican leaders are on board. Chuck and Nancy then released a statement around the same time saying the president's tweets were not inconsistent with what they said. So Chuck and Nancy backing off a little bit from the original. There's a, you know how this works, right? I'll give you an analogy. Apple introduced the iPhone on Tuesday. They got a new feature in the new iPhone that you're not going to be able to get for 9 months. If then, they can only make 10,000 of these things a week at 300,000 a month. They're having trouble with components. At any rate, the big deal on the new iPhone is face ID, facial recognition. No more fingerprint ID. This phone bombards your face with 30,000 dots with a 3D sensor that measures the contour of your face, and it can't be fooled if you grow a beard. It can't be fooled if you put on glasses. It can't be fooled if you get a sex change. It can't be fooled. And so they're demoing this. And the first national public demo doesn't work. It didn't work because it did. It did exactly what it was designed to do, but the media didn't care. The media wants Apple to blow up. The media wants Apple to be embarrassed, so they ran to the microphones and they ran to the keyboards and they began pounding. Apple's premier issue, big fail, Face ID, big fail. It didn't fail. I'm not going to get into tech explanations here with you, but it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Those of you who have an iPhone with fingerprint ID, you know when you restart the phone, you have to manually enter your passcode before Touch ID works. It's designed this way. Somebody had been playing around with the phone that Craig Federighi was going to demo Face ID on. It was his face that the phone had been told to recognize and had been trained to recognize. All these other assistants were turning it on. They didn't know. This is so new. They didn't know the phone was trying to find Federighi, and when it didn't, it shut down. Exactly as it's supposed to do. Somebody other than you picks up your phone, tries to use it, and it isn't you. The phone shuts down and says, screw you. Well, it doesn't. It'd be fun if it did on the face. But Federighi didn't know any of that. So he picks up the phone, and it says, please enter your Apple ID. And immediate point is, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It worked flawlessly, but the first report was big fail, brand new Apple stellar feature Face ID blows up. And in the next 12 hours, the bloggers were so happy because they hate Apple. They hate Apple like they hate Republicans. It's amazing. And they were so happy to report that the big feature blew up. Oh, it was the greatest thing. It was orgasmic. Except they were wrong. They weren't curious, and even half of them that reported this knew that the system had done exist. So same thing here. First report, somebody says Trump caved on the wall. He made a deal with Chuck and Nancy, amnesty for the dreamers, and the wall is gone. So that's what everybody knows. That's first reported, second reported, third reported, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 25th report, until the counter version gets out there. And it doesn't matter how powerful the counter version is, and it doesn't matter how many people type, tweet, broadcast the counter version. The first version is what makes the impression. This is a very frustrating thing to me, by the way, because I'm lied about so much. And when the time, and I don't respond to most of it, even when I do, what are the odds? The first thing that's reported is what people believe. Even sophisticates, even people who understand how the media works, even people who understand the tricks, the subterfuge, the deceit, the dishonesty, even those people fall for the first thing that's reported. Now, I'm not defending Trump. What I'm telling you, folks, is I don't know yet. But it looks to me like Trump is tweeting all morning long that there is no deal, period. And there certainly isn't a deal on getting rid of the wall. It may happen later, but it's not gotten rid of. It's not gone. Boil everything down. Is Trump, I'm asking you who voted for him, is he this tone deaf? Is he this ignorant? Does he not know what got him elected? Does he? I mean, and I'm telling you, some of the staunchest Trump supporters are out there, and they've jumped ship. Steve King from Iowa was talking about, this is it, Trump's blown it. What the media couldn't do, Trump did, i.e. force his supporters to leave. Mitch and Paul are probably up there going, all right, we're saved. Chuck and Nancy they're having talks with the media saying, okay, what do we need to do to keep it going our way? Meanwhile, Trump's down in Florida actually doing some work while the rest of these people are engaged in PR messaging and so forth, which will probably triumph over reality. It always does. One of my major problems with media in general. So, Here's Trump's tweet. No deal was made last night on DACA. Massive border security would have to be agreed to in exchange for consent, would be subject to vote. Wall, which is already under construction to form a new renovation of old and existing fences and walls, will continue to be built. Then Schumer and Pelosi more or less agreed with Trump's take on the meeting. They had a joint statement that hit inboxes as Trump was talking this morning. President Trump's tweets are not inconsistent with the agreement reached last night. And as we said last night, there was no final deal, but there was agreement on the following. Oh, there wasn't a deal. But Chuck and Nancy said they had a deal and the trunk had caved on the wall or something. Somebody, maybe they didn't necessarily alleged it and the media reported it. President Trump's tweets are not inconsistent with the agreement reached last night. Not inconsistent? As we said last night, there was no final deal. There wasn't? Well, America woke up today thinking there was. And that they're eating the excrement sandwich. And now Chuck and Nancy says, as we said last night, there was no deal. You didn't say last night there wasn't a deal, Chuck and Nancy. You led everybody to believe there was a deal and that Trump caved on it. But there was agreement on the following. We agreed the president would support enshrining DACA protections into law and encourage the House and Senate to act. What remains to be negotiated are the details of border security. That remains to be negotiated? Like the wall remains to be negotiated? Yes, what remains to be negotiated are the details of border security with a mutual goal of finalizing all details as soon as. So there's not finalized the details. Okay, a lot to digest here, folks. Just getting started. Be right. At 10:21 p.m., White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said they were mistaken. She said while DACA and border security were both discussed, excluding the wall was certainly not agreed to. That's like 2 hours ago. And then Trump followed up in a series of tweets. He defended the Dreamers again, but said no deal's been made. He said, does anybody really want to throw out good, educated, accomplished young people who have jobs, some serving the military? Really? He said, there have been in our country for many years through no fault of their own, brought in by parents at a young age, plus big border security. So I can see why people are worried. There hasn't been a cave yet, but it looks like there might be. I want to take you back, folks. I warned everybody about the possibility of this. None of this catches me off guard or by surprise. We're going to go back to March 27th on this program. Listen. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the people that are trying to criminalize Donald Trump. We're talking about the people that are trying to impeach him. We're talking about people who are trying via innuendo and leak and media assassination. We're dealing with people that are trying to destroy Donald Trump, and his press secretary just signaled that they are serious about reaching out to these people to try to get certain things done legislatively, like infrastructure or tax reform. I can't see the Democrats working with Trump on tax reform unless the rich get soaked. The thing about this that should be worrisome is that if this alliance happens, if they're not bluffing, if they're serious, and if my scenario gets close, it's not going to be the Democrats adopting Trump's agenda. It's going to be the other way around. That was back on March 27th. You have to go back, well, you can say that far back or not that far, whatever, March. And Trump was already getting frustrated with the fact that Mitch and Paul were stonewalling him. And he's already talking about working with the Democrats, Chuck and Nancy, back in March. And as I said, if he does that, it's going to be Chuck and Nancy's agenda and not his. So the concern that people have, I can understand it. We'll be back. Don't go away. And here is an update. This comes from the UK Daily Mail. By the way, greetings, folks, and welcome. It's the Rush Limbaugh program and the EIB network. I'm sure you know that. My voice among the most recognizable in the world. I didn't think it was necessary to tell you what you already knew. But here's the phone number, 800-282-2882. Daily Mail update. Trump gets off the plane on the tarmac in Florida, and he says that he expects funding for his border wall to pass when he's ready for it, or Republicans will become the obstructionists in Congress. He said, ultimately, we have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we are doing nothing. That's what Trump is reported to have said from the tarmac when he landed in Florida this morning. The president also denied that he was giving amnesty to illegal immigrants as part of an agreement that he's working on with Chuck and Nancy. He said, we're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're working with everybody. Republican, we're working with Democrat, but we're not talking citizenship. Look, folks, everybody knows we're not going to kick these dreamers out of the country. I know that a lot of people think that we should have no mercy here, and mercy's the wrong word. That if we're going to have border security, we're border security. If you're illegal and you're here illegal, you've got to go back and then try to get back in legally. I understand that. But the reality is these are people that campaign for votes, and nobody wants to be associated with pictures that would certainly exist, even if they were fake. And they most likely would be. You know, of a bunch of... Can you imagine 150 pictures of that federal agent storming the home in Florida to kidnap Elian Gonzalez, send him back to Cuba? You remember that? A lot of people thought that agent should have shut up, left Janet Reno, should have left that kid there instead of sending him back to a communist country. What are we doing? We're sending a kid. Remember that reaction? Well, imagine if you see a picture after picture, video of that, with a bunch of little kids, fully armed and body armor, federal agents grabbing 5-year-olds and 15-year-olds and throwing them in a paddy wagon and driving them to the airport and put on a C-130 for parts of... Nobody wants to be associated with that. The way to do this is what I suggested the other day. If you're going to allow them to stay, if you're going to make this exception, you get the funding for the wall in it or there's no deal. And now you add something else. These people being allowed to stay can't register to vote for 15 or 20 years, whatever. Take the incentive away from the Democrats to want, and the Republicans too, because they want them for different reasons. They want them for cheap labor. The Democrats want them for voters. Well, Republicans would like that too. But you put in a proviso. We can do what we want here, right? Chuck and Nancy are not running this show. They better not be running that. That was my point that I made in the soundbite that I played for. This is not Chuck and Nancy's show. Chuck and Nancy's party lost. Chuck and Nancy's party haven't won an election that counts other than Obama's presidencies in 2008 and 2012. Every other election the Democrats have been running with national House, Senate, they're losing. There's no way they get to run this show. But remember, the media is desperate to split Trump's supporters away from him. They are that's the only thing they got. Head story yesterday. They've to Politico. They've tried everything. It's not working. They don't understand it. And even the Democrat agenda, free tuition, not working. You know why that's not working? A lot of people think, whoa, that seemed to be a magnet. Anybody liberal would support that. Well, the problem is that there's a lot of Democrats with student debt, college loan debt. There's a lot of parents who were not told their tuition is going to be free. So now all of a sudden, how do you grandfather that? How do you go back and tell people that have massive student loan debt that, hey, guess what? People going to college now are going to get free tuition and they're going to have a student. What about me? Why won't you get rid of my debt? Well, we can't do that. We don't have the money. Anyway, it's not supported. So the Democrats do not have, their key agenda items do not have massive public support, and their attempts to destroy Trump have failed. All of them. So all they can do now, the only thing they've got is to split Trump's base away from Trump. And that's what all of this today is. Every bit of that is splitting. They want you to think Trump has sold you out and thrown you under the bus. They want you to think that Trump has given away his mandate in exchange for doing deals. They want you to believe that Trump loves deals. He loves action, and he's been frustrated because the Republicans won't do anything. So he's going over on the Democrat side, and he's doing deals. And in order to do that, the Democrats are running the show. The media wants you to believe that Trump is acquiescing to the Democrat agenda just so he can do deals and just so there can be something done. Now, the White House has been as clear as they can be today that there is not an agreement on the wall, and Pelosi, Chuck, and Nancy had to tweet that that's correct. So they are the ones backtracking today, not Trump and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But the very fact that this has been reported with all of this energy, and you go back to the point, the first thing, the first element of a story that people hear, they believe it, whether it's right or wrong. And so this is going to have a lasting impact. Now, as I say, there's some updates. Trump said if we don't, this is on the tarmac in Florida, after all this brouhaha in Washington, lands in Florida, if we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing. Trump says there will eventually be a border wall and there won't be amnesty for dreamers. But they're going to be allowed to stay. People, whoa, wait a minute now. If you're letting them stay, how is that not amnesty? Well, they're not going to be made automatic citizens. Fine. Okay, if that's true, then they can't vote either. And for those of you shouting at me, Rush, we're talking about children. Not all of them are children anymore. We're talking about 800,000 people. Again, Trump reiterated that he expects funding for the border wall to pass when he's ready for it. Ultimately, we have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we are doing nothing. Now, that's the latest. Earlier, this is AlanBWest.com website. Trump White House issue major clarification in Dreamer deal. And there's a pull quote from the story. Schumer's communications director tweeted in response to the denial by Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying the president made clear he would continue pushing the wall, not just as part of this agreement. So Chuck and Nancy are backtracking a little bit here. But look, they know what they're doing. They got their first message out that Trump caved. Trump says the wall's off the table. Trump's going to do it later. We're going to have amnesty. That's out there. That's what people think now. And it's going to take a lot of repetition to correct this. And plus, the first impression is always made. I mean, it's the first imprint. It's almost impossible to release it. Audio soundbite number 2. This is another flashback. January 3rd, CNN. Jake Tapper had Chuck U. Schumer on the program with Dana Bash, who said, you expected to be the Senate Majority Leader working with President Hillary Clinton. By the way, have you seen this inane report from CNN extolling Hillary Clinton's breathing talent? That she has this unique ability to breathe through one nostril at a time. It's obviously because she's got some problems. She's sitting there going, Hillary's not healthy. We'll leave it at that. And so to cover, she's so much smarter than the rest of us. She's so much more talented than the rest. She has perfected one nostril breathing. I'm serious. Anyway, Dana Bash says, you expected to be the majority leader working with Hillary Clinton. Now you find yourself the leader of the opposition and Trump's in the White House. Remember this, January 3rd, just before Trump's been inaugurated. How will you walk that fine line between when to work with Trump and when not to?
The only way we're going to work with him is if he moves completely in our direction and abandons his Republican colleagues.
January 3rd, before Trump's even inaugurated. And I remember him saying this. That's why it's on the soundbite roster. The only way we're going to work with him, exactly what I said back in March. 3 months after 2.5 months after Chuck Yu said this. Now, here's Chuck Yu. This is after the denial by Sarah Huckabee Sanders and after Trump clarified, no, there's no deal here and the wall's not gone. Here is Chuck Yu Schumer on the floor of the United States Senate.
We all agreed on a framework to pass DACA protections and additional border security measures excluding the wall. We agreed that the president would support enshrining the DACA protections into law. What remains to be negotiated are the details of border security, with a mutual goal of finalizing all the details as soon as possible. While both sides agreed that the wall would not be any part of this agreement, the president made clear he intends to pursue it at a later time, and we made clear that we would continue to oppose it. If you listen to the president's comments this morning, Director Mulvaney's comments this morning, it is clear that what Leader Pelosi and I put out last night was exactly accurate. We're not for the wall. We'll never be for the wall.
Yeah, but what you put out's not exactly accurate. We got Mulvaney here. We're prepared. We're ready to go, Chuck you, but we have to take a brief time out. By the way, have you noticed Trump's down in Florida, gets off the airplane and goes, folks, you know what I just saw? I can't believe they're passing out bananas in the food tent. Trump and Melania and the team, they're passing out bananas. You know what this is going to lead to. You know damn well what this is going to lead to. I got a bad feeling. Now, bananas are actually the perfect food for the weather conditions in Florida, for heat and humidity, for replenishing electrolytes and the things that are necessary to keep your body functioning. Bananas are the perfect food. You may not know this, but when East Coast, Northeastern football teams go out to Arizona to play the Cardinals, or when the Chargers in a couple playoffs games went to Miami to play the Dolphins, bananas for 2 days before the game. So it's actually a very smart decision. But you just know what some people are going to say, especially if there are a couple black people in line. You know exactly what they're going to say. I'm just warning you. What I was going to say about this, though, Trump's got off the airplane. He's down there with Melania, the whole team, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, Rick Scott, the governor. I mean, the Florida Power and Light CEO, everybody. There's such a good job. You just know that this is humming. You know this recovery. FEMA, the federal, the state, the local, the entrepreneurial efforts are all working together. And the recovery, reestablishing electricity and other things must just be going gang up, because you're not hearing anything about it. The drive-bys are barely covering this. The drive-bys are not spending any time at all. The drive-bys are all trying to tell you that Trump caved and the wall is history and Chuck and Nancy are running the administration. They're not even telling you what's going on down in Florida with the hurricane recovery, or Houston. They're not even talking about Hurricane Harvey anymore. And if there was a gripe, if there was even one tiny gripe, they'd be all over it, because they can't wait to report that Trump doesn't care. They can't wait. They'd love to do what they did to Bush and Mike Brown, the FEMA director, after Katrina, but they can't, because there aren't any serious complaints. And if there were people, I'm being ignored. They walked right by me and didn't give me a banana. If there was any of that going on, it'd be the biggest story of the week. The drive-bys have been salivating, hoping to write that Trump's blowing the hurricane recovery effort. And you can't even find a story on it, which must mean it's going gangbusters. Okay, so Chuck U. Schumer, in a statement on the floor of the Senate, we all agreed on a framework, passed DACA protections, additional border security measures, excluding the wall. We agreed the president would support enshrining DACA protection into law. What remains to be negotiated? He kind of said that. What remains to be negotiated? He just glossed over that. Are the details of border security with a mutual goal of finalizing as soon as possible. They didn't finalize anything, folks. And Chuck U confirms it on the floor of the Senate. What remains to be negotiated? While both sides agreed the wall would not be any part of this agreement, the president made clear he intends to pursue it at a later time. We hate it. We're not going to be supported ever. The president wants it. And then he said Mulvaney's comments this morning, if you listen to the president's and Mulvaney's comments, it's clear that what Nancy and I put out last night was accurate. Okay, here is Mulvaney's on Squawk Box at CNBC. And the question, people are calling him Amnesty Don this morning. Does the reaction of the political base here affect what's going to happen in the White House? Did we get close to a deal and now we're pulling away because of that?
I don't think the criticism is fair. I think the criticism is assuming that the president is giving up on something. He's not. I think if you do end up seeing some type of agreement regarding DACA and this massive but not wall border security, talking about technology and people, all the things that we need to stop drugs and illegals from coming across the border, if that does become the framework for an agreement, that does not mean the president is giving up on his priorities. He's made it very, very clear to me that the wall is a top priority for him in all budget negotiations and will continue to be.
So now you gather to break bread in the Blue Room at the White House. What's the mood there? Number 17.
What you saw last night was a group of professional deal makers. I saw the president do this on a couple of times. When the conversation started to move to the things that we disagreed on, he moved it back to the things that we could agree on. I think that's the way you get deals done, right? You and I might disagree 80% of the time, but that still gives us 20% opportunity to try and work something out. The mood was cordial. There was pushback on issues. There was very polite, gentlemanly, and ladylike pushback on issues on both sides. Mr. Schumer continues to push this idea of this $30 billion tunnel under the Hudson River that the president very politely pushed back on. But I thought it was cordial and productive. The president is not giving up on the wall, and he's certainly not giving up on border security.
Mulvaney says that Trump was deal-making, hasn't given up on the wall. Do with that what you will, folks, but that's the word. Schumer's communication director tweeted in response to the denial by Huckabee Sanders, saying the president made clear he would continue pushing the wall, just not part of this agreement. That's not what they were saying last night and this morning. They wanted you to believe that they had gotten rid of the wall. They're the ones backtracking today. But it's still a dicey situation. I'm not denying that. Back in a sec, folks. The views expressed by the host on this program are riveting the nation and permeating and tickling the world. A household name in all four corners of the world, I am Rush Limbaugh, America's real anchorman, America's truth detector, and the doctor of democracy. All here, all combined in one harmless, lovable little fuzzball bundle. At a secret, secure, confined location on the left coast. Happy to have you here. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. Let me look at the call roster up here. We have some calls that people want to weigh in on this. And I always try to get calls in on the first hour, but I was not able to squeeze any in. And people, I want to hear what you think. I want to hear what you Trumpers think of all this. Because I'm going to tell you, folks, I don't want to throw any names around out there, but there were famous big name, Fox News people that are big-time Trumpers who were tweeting that it's all over, that Trump sacked everybody, that Trump's played everybody, that Trump screwed us, that Trump's let... And that was part of my wake-up call today. So I had to hustle in here and try to make sense of everything that did indeed happen. It was continuing to unfold. Even after I got here. So that's what the first hour was an attempt to put all of this in perspective and before rendering an opinion on it. Because I'm just telling you, I don't trust the drive-bys, and I'm continually amazed at the number of people who do, despite knowing what their mantras are, despite knowing what their objective is. There isn't a Trumpist around who does not know that the media is trying to separate Trump supporters from Trump. And judging by some of the tweets I saw today, it's not hard for the media to do that. And psychologically, look, Republicans are like battered... Should I even mention that? My Lord. I was going to say, battered spouses. Because, it goes both ways. Like battered spouses. It's inexplicable. But Republicans have just been savaged and let down and double-crossed and lied to so many times that it is a political expectation that it's going to happen again. Now, there are many extreme wacko leftists who think the same about their bunch. There's a story today about liberals in San Francisco. Now, common sense would say, based on the way the drive-bys have been covering things, common sense would say that the left would be livid with Chuck and Nancy because this guy, Trump, is a pig. This guy grabs, this guy, Billy Bush tape, this guy is a despicable human being. This guy is low-rent scum. They hate him. And so you would think that if Chuck and Nancy even go in the same room and have dinner, it'd be grounds for kicking them out of the party. But no. The LA Times has a story today that liberals in San Francisco are loving this. They think it's great because they believed what everybody apparently believed early today, that Trump had caved and that Chuck and Nancy had rolled Trump. And as long as they think that happens, I guess they'll be cool with it. So the only group of people feeling betrayal today or did feel betrayal are Trump supporters. Now, Chuck Schumer, I saw a story at the Week, the WEEK. It's a website. And the headline, Chuck Schumer caught on hot mic basking in Trump's adulation. I said, what is this? So I read it. Senate Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer took to the Senate floor today, this morning actually, to discuss Equifax's massive security breach, the physical limitations of the border wall, and his supposed agreement with Trump, struck alongside Nancy. But before he officially took to the floor, Schumer bounded into the Senate chamber just after a speech by Mitch McConnell and took a minute to talk to a colleague. Sorry, just got here. Anything new, Schumer can be heard saying. And then he was heard saying, he likes us. He likes me anyway, Schumer said with a chuckle. Well, we have that. Schumer walking into the Senate, talking to a colleague, bragging about how Trump likes him. And here is what that sounded like.
He likes us. He likes me anyway. What we said was exactly accurate. Here's what I told him. I said, Mr. President, you're much better off if you can sometimes step right and sometimes step left. If you have to step just in one direction, you're boxed. He gets that.
Were you able to hear that? Okay, so this is Chuck. It's a hot mic. It's like when Obama was caught telling Dmitry Medvedev, tell Vlad to be patient. We'll get rid of our nukes after I win re-election, and I'll have more flexibility. That was in 2012, right before the election. Same situation here. There's a hot mic down there on the Senate floor. Chuck Hughes said, he likes us. He likes me anyway. And what we said was exactly accurate. Here's what I told him. I said, Mr. President, you're much better off if you can sometimes step right, sometimes step left. If you have to step just in one direction, you're boxed. He gets that. So one takeaway from this is that Chuck felt it necessary to tell his colleague that what we said was true, which means there might have been some doubt. Which means that people on Chuck's team know that Chuck is prone to exaggeration, that Chuck may be prone to misstatements. So Chuck had to make sure his colleague knew, hey, you know what? What we said was exactly accurate, and here's what I told him. Now, why would Chuck say that? Well, the reason, because I don't care what Chuck thinks he said. What the media reported that Chuck and Nancy said was that Trump had agreed to forget the wall in exchange, in a deal for granting amnesty or whatever, letting the DACA kids, the Dreamers, stay. And the White House has been pushing back on that all morning. Trump has been pushing back personally on it from Florida after he landed at Fort Myers Airport or thereabouts to participate in Florida aid. So let me see. Let's go to the phones because I feel sometimes I feel bad. People have been holding on for so long, and I intend to get their calls sooner than I got to today. We'll start in Coronado, California. Bob, I'm glad you called. What's up? What your thought on this?
Well, Russ, thanks for clarifying all this in the first hour.
I appreciate you feeling like it was clarified because that was the objective.
Yes, and Rush, what I think is important is that what I see what the Democrats are doing is they're willing to work with Trump, and I'm willing to give away some of my ideals as long as Trump does something, even with them. And that's very disappointing. But if Ryan and McConnell aren't going to cooperate at all, I would rather see Trump pass tax reform, even tax reform light, with Democrat policies involved, than see the Republicans stymie him. So I'm not going to give up on Trump, even if he starts to move to the left, to get something done with tax reform. Doing nothing is no longer an option.
But let me ask you something here, Bob. What if what he gets done, because Chuck Schumer said back in January that the only way they'll work with Trump is if he moves in their direction, if he moves their agenda. What if that's what if a tax reform package soaks it to the rich and gives some tax relief to the middle class? It won't be much if the Democrats are involved. What if that's how it happens?
Well, Rush, to me, that'll be horribly disappointing. But that being said, if we just sit and follow McConnell and Ryan and say, well, nothing's going to happen at least until 2018, I mean, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to wipe out about 10 or 12 more Democrat senators next year.
I know. I mentioned this. I mentioned this yesterday. That wasn't the first time. The opportunity that exists here. If you're conservative, if you're Republican, I dare say that if you're over 50, you never thought that what happened last November would be possible. You wouldn't think a Republican, I don't care who it is, could win the White House and that we would control the House and the Senate at the same time and have the Democrats' 2018 prospects be in the tank, which they are. The Democrats stand to lose even more seats in the Senate. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, it's certainly once-in-a-generation opportunity to fix everything that has been on our minds for 30 years. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's not being utilized. And it isn't being utilized, sadly. The perception is that it's House and Senate Republicans that are refusing to work with Trump, that they're embarrassed of him, that they don't want Trump to become the definition of a Republican. They don't want Trump to define the Republican Party agenda. They are also very, very loyal. They owe a lot to their donors. The donors hate Trump. The Chamber of Commerce hates Trump. All of these people that the Republicans think they can't get elected without don't like Trump. So it has been a stonewall. And if you're frustrated about this, and I'll tell you I am, I'm livid. And it was seeable. I mean, this behavior by the House and Senate Republican leadership isn't anything new. All you had to do was listen to what they were saying during the campaign. They didn't want Trump to win. They didn't think he was going to win. They never thought they would be in this position. They may not even like being in this position because they don't want this kind of pressure on them. They don't want to have to move his agenda. The Republicans in Washington are identical with the Democrats when it comes to the big issue, and that's immigration. Both parties want amnesty. Both parties want it now. They want comprehensive immigration reform, and they want open borders. And the people that give the money are the ones that call the shots in politics. So the Republicans are being loyal to their donors. They're being loyal to the paymasters, if you will. And it's squandering an opportunity. And I've said this guy from Coronado, you just heard, every Trump person that I've talked to, everyone from any walk of life has said pretty much the same thing. If Trump has to work with Democrats to get some of what he wants done, so be it. I haven't run into anybody. Now, and this is purely anecdotal, and I don't talk to a lot of people. I'm just saying, in my universe, people that I know who voted for Trump and want the Trump agenda or most of it. I don't know anybody who is content for nothing to happen, status quo, while the Republicans and Trump bicker. I don't know anybody who wants any more of this. Trump was elected again. He's probably the biggest mandate to do things of any recent president because of the specifics of his agenda and his campaign. So many times a day he announced what he was going to do. So he was elected, he won, therefore he's got a mandate. And his party is not assisting and not helping. And they're even violating promises they made for 7 years on the repeal and replace Obamacare. So, and I'll bet you there are a lot of Trump people out there who if he has to work with Democrats to get what he wants done, then so be it. I mean, even when Trump did the first deal with Chuck and Nancy on expanding the debt limit and talked about extending a debt limit forever because it was such a good thing, Trump did. And there were a couple other elements in that first deal with Trump and Chuck and Nancy. I had people saying, you know what? I'm talking about rock-ribbed lifetime Republicans who said to me, I love Trump sticking it to Mitch and Paul, but I'm not sure I like it being done this way, meaning doing deals with Democrats, Chuck and Nancy on expanding spending, expanding government. But the anti-Republican leadership sentiment among people who want Trump to succeed is palpable. And I think people are fed up with everything being static, no movement, nothing happening. They're fed up with every attempt that Trump makes to move it forward being thwarted by his own party. And so the Democrats have come along, and Chuck and Nancy have made it look like, hey, we're willing to work with a guy. Hey, and we'll help him get what he wants, but it's got to be what we want. And that's where we are right now. So they struck a deal. Chuck and Nancy go out there, tell the media, hey, we got rid of the wall. Trump's joining us here on the docket, kids. We got rid of the wall. They report that. Everybody believes it. And Trump and Sarah Huckabee say, nope, didn't happen. Now everybody's wondering. Because everybody believes the first thing that they hear. We'll get back to the phones when we come back. Don't go away, folks. And going to stick with the phones here for a couple of more minutes. Back to them. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network. Ken in Marble Falls, Texas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, sir. It's an honor. Thank you.
I'm glad you called. Thank you very much.
I was going to
wait. Hang on. Ken, hang on just a second. I know.
Certainly.
We don't. I appreciate it. I just got a soundbite. Paul Ryan says there's no deal. There is no deal. Now, this is interesting because Ryan, the Republicans run the Congress. And all this has been going on without him. Here's Trump and Chuck, you and Nancy. We got to deal with Trump. There's not going to be a wall. We're getting the Dreamers. And Ryan and McConnell said, we run this place. So Ryan went out there today, weekly press briefing, Q&A. Mr. Speaker, have you asked the president to at least check with you before he makes an agreement with the Democrats?
There is no agreement. The president and the chief of staff called me from Air Force One today to discuss what was discussed. And it was a discussion, not an agreement or a negotiation. We need border security and enforcement as part of any agreement. I think that's something the Democrats are beginning to understand.
Okay, no deal. The guy that runs the House of Representatives finally spoke up. Hey, I called the White House to find out what's going on, which means they didn't call him. Is that right? Is that what he said here? No, they called him. He said the staff called him. Okay. Can you imagine you're these guys? And all this, you get up too, like everybody else did, and you find out Chuck and Nancy are saying that Trump threw the wall away? And you call Mitch, you know anything about this? No, I don't know anything about it. Lane, do you know anything about it? No, Mitch, I don't know anything about it. Paul, do you know it? No. Any Republican know anything about this? No. So does that change what you were going to say, Ken?
No, actually, I believe that those of us that voted for President Trump because of who he was will not be dissuaded by the media or those that think they voted for him just to vote against somebody. I truthfully think he will drain the swamp, and he's showing people that the swamp has nothing to do with party affiliations. He's showing both sides have no core beliefs, and they'll turn on a dime on anything.
It's a challenging. The left has core beliefs, Ken.
Well, they have ideology.
Yes. They're not yours or mine, but they've got core beliefs, and they are damn loyal to them. But I get what you think. You think Trump has the ability to prevail against them while making them think they're winning?
Yes, sir. I think he's already playing both sides against each other, and they don't even realize it. He's a lot smarter than these politicians we have.
All right. What was your first thought when you first heard today that Trump had negotiated away the wall in exchange for letting the DACA people stay in the country?
Well, when I first heard it, it came from the media, so I assumed it was a lie and that they were coloring it to fit their liberal agenda.
Okay.
I do not believe he will give away the farm.
Okay. You really thought that. I know that's a smart thing to say. It's what I would say. But there was no fear? You didn't have even a flash of temporary, momentary panic?
No, sir. I really do believe that he's playing them.
All right. I have yet. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate the call. Folks, I have yet. Now, my memory could be a little wavering on this, but I can't recall fielding a call yet from a legitimate Trumpist who feels betrayed. I know they're out there, but I haven't had. Most of the people that have called here have echoed the two that we've had today and all the ones on previous occasions. Their faith in Trump is total, and it's unshakable, at least as of now. And they are not at all worried about this. We'll be back right after this. That's right, a man, a legend, a way of life. Angie in Dayton, your turn. What do you think about all this?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What do you think about all this? What's on your mind?
Well, I'm not a Trumpster. I voted for him, but I'll get to my point. I think that he's always 3 steps ahead of Pelosi, the Democrats, and the Republicans. And so I think this was a power play that he did.
You think this is a grand Trump strategery, in other words?
I do. They always want to be in the limelight. They never want to be outdone. They always want to be the center of attention. So if he moves to Pelosi and they start to work with him a little bit, he's pushing others towards him as well who never wanted to work with him to begin with.
You know, this is an interesting point. So you were kind of iffy on Trump. You voted for him anyway, but you're not a big time supporter. Now you've become one because you think he's 3 moves ahead of everybody.
Well, I became a Trump supporter after the Billy Bob or Billy Bush incident, actually.
After it?
So, yes, I did.
After it?
Yes. I was...
I love you even more. That's just... Could you walk us through that process? How in the world did you become... Because this is in total opposition to what the drive-by media thinks people should think and how they should have reacted. The Billy Bush episode moved you closer to Trump. How? Why?
Well, I have always had a lot of male friends. I've heard a lot of male locker room talk, and believe me, women are just the same. And I believe they just threw this out of proportion. There are women out there who do this as men who are groupies. Men and women are groupies. And there are women who allow this. And to think that, oh my gosh, men don't talk like this, women don't do this, women don't talk like this, men don't, aren't groupies, it's absurd. And it was sort of nitpicky. And it threw me.
You're exactly my point. That is how people talk. You've heard it. And women too. We've all heard that.
Well, Rush, I have one more thing and one more comment about what you said yesterday or the other day about actually it had to do with she doesn't understand why white women did not vote for Trump. And I have an idea why. The suburban women, whenever they're telling everyone that white men are homophobic or the problem with America, are racist and everything else under the sun, and then they expect us to vote for her when she's sort of criticizing our husbands or our sons or our brothers or our fathers.
You know, that's actually very, very shrewd of you. I really am glad I held on with you, Angie. Thank you very much. I'm gonna expand on your points here, but did you get that, folks? She said she wanted to weigh in on a point yesterday. Hillary's out there saying that. You remember what Hillary said? Hillary said that white women did not vote for her because their husbands told them not to. Remember that? And we all say, wait a minute, what happened to feminism? Who are all of these docile women who are only doing what their husbands and boyfriends tell them to do? But Hillary said that. White women didn't vote for her because their husbands didn't like Hillary and their husbands are telling them to vote. And Angie's point is, no, Hillary, you're out there calling white guys the problem with America. You're calling them racists. You're calling them homophobes. You're calling them bigots. And the only white guys you seem to like are not the kind of guys we married. So to hell with you, Hillary. We're not going to sit here. We don't have any solidarity with you just because you're a woman. This is why you folks on a program like this, you actually end up talking to the people who make the country work. And another thing that she said that I think is very insightful, and I do love the fact that after the Billy Bush thing, she glommed onto Trump even tighter because she knows that's how people in her world talk. Women too. But the point, she thinks Trump is 3 steps ahead of these people. Now, stick with me on this. Most people, even a lot of Trumpists, but not as many, the conventional wisdom is that Trump, as the outsider, doesn't know what's going on. That the inside the Beltway culture is so special, and it's so unique, and it's so tiny that nobody that's not part of it could ever function there. Nobody who's not in the establishment could possibly understand it. And so they have an arrogance that leads to a condescension against people, which leads the inside the Beltway people, the establishment, both parties, to think of Trump as no different than his voters, a bumpkin idiot. And that leads them to believe that they're going to be able to run rings around him, and he's not even going to know what's happening because he doesn't know. He may have built buildings and he may have written the art of the deal, but he can't do what we do. He can't even understand what we do because he's too stupid. Now, they may not say it that way, but I guarantee you they have that attitude. These are arrogant people. They're very exclusive. It is a very elite, unique group in their own minds. And they do tell themselves they're special and they're different and they're better. And Trump represents, somebody from the wrong side of the tracks accidentally stumbling into the clubhouse here and nobody threw him out. And so they think they're dealing with a bumpkin and an idiot that they can make mincemeat of. And I get the deep state thinks that. I'll bet you some of the people that Trump picked in his cabinet think that. Some of the, I'll leave it at that. And that leads them to believe. So you have that belief, they do, this overall belief that Trump's out of his league, essentially. So Chuck and Nancy go to the White House for dinner. And the immediate belief they have is, they're going to smoke him. Oh, this is not even a fair fight. Trump didn't even know what's coming. Whereas Angie just said, in her opinion, it's Chuck and Nancy that don't know what's coming. Because it's Chuck and Nancy that have never dealt with somebody like Trump because they're the ones living in a cocoon and they're the ones who don't know what life is really like in the business world. And I guarantee you they don't. Business people to Chuck and Nancy are donors. Business people to Chuck and Nancy are the golden goose. They'll never run out of money. We'll keep taxing them. We'll keep asking for donations. But Angie's view is that Trump, as a real guy who's done real things and done them very well, can run rings around them, but is not going to make it look like he does because part of the trick is to play dumb, out of place, or what have you. The point is, she has complete faith that whatever's going on here, that it's Chuck and Nancy who are being suckered. They just don't know it yet. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of Trump people have that view. And remember, she was not an original Trumpist. She was dragged kicking and screaming to Trump after the Billy Bush tape. Is that not fascinating? I just love that. I'm just telling you, I do. And welcome back, my friends. Rush Limbaugh, talent on loan from God. Grab audio soundbite number 4. We need to hear from Nancy in all this. This was this morning on Capitol Hill. Nancy Pelosi held her weekly press briefing during the Q&A. A sycophantic reporter said, "Do you trust the President of the United States? And should the Dreamers trust him?" So in other words, see, these people are believing that Trump made a deal, and Chuck and Nancy somehow at the White House brought Trump around. The Dreamers are okay. They're going to allow them in. Trump's not going to do the wall. But the reporter says, see, the reporter's not sure. They're too happy. You sure you can trust Trump? Do you think the Dreamers should trust Trump?
I do trust that the president is sincere in understanding that the public supports, that overwhelmingly the public supports not sending these young people back. It was interpreted by some that we had a deal on the bill, but that wasn't on the package. That wasn't the case. We had an agreement to move forward, in our view, with the DREAM Act as the basis for how we protect the Dreamers and for further discussions on what provisions relating to the border might be in an accompanying bill or whatever as we go forward. So I trust the president in that regard.
See, I love this. Of course I trust the president. 2 days ago, she hated Trump. She's out there saying the most despicable, horrible things in the world about it. She trusts him now. And I'm sure you Trumpists think that's because Trump is so clever and he makes everybody like him. So the drive-by guy was undoubtedly disappointed because he wanted her to say, "No, we don't trust this guy. He's a pig. You saw the Billy Bush tape. The guy's a pig. We hate Trump. No, we don't trust Trump, but we're working on behalf of the..." That's what the reporter wanted to hear. So the reporter didn't get what he wanted. Let's go to Trump. I quoted Trump all morning. Let's actually go to the audio sound bites. This in Fort Myers on the tarmac at the airport. Reporter says, "Are you open to citizenship for the Dreamers over time, you pig?"
We're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're working with everybody, Republican. We're working with Democrat. I just spoke with Paul Ryan. He's on board. Everybody's on board. They want to do something. We're not talking about amnesty. We're talking about taking care of people that were brought here, people that have done a good job and were not brought here of their own volition. But very importantly, what we want, we have to have a wall. If the wall is going to be obstructed, when we need the funds at a little bit later date, we'll be determining how much we need. Then we're not doing anything. Right.
Oh, well, there it was. You heard it. I mean, I quoted him earlier, but you just heard it here. If they don't get the money for the wall, we need the funds a little bit later. That's what Chuck and Nancy said. He said they're going to do the wall a little bit later. If we don't get the money for the wall, the funding, then we're not doing anything. Now, I got a guy from Katy, Texas on hold. His name is Andrew. Andrew, stay there. I don't have enough time to get to you. But Andrew is, he's not all hunky-dory with this and wants to explain why, and I want you to hear what he has to say. But there just isn't enough time. If Andrew were a highly trained broadcast specialist, he could make his point in 20 seconds like I do. But I wouldn't put that kind of pressure on a call. Andrew, you got 20 seconds, go. It's not fair to rank amateurs, folks. Lovable rank amateurs. That's why I leave the precise timing leading up to the ear-splitting tone time to get out to the highly trained broadcast specialists. Ladies and gentlemen, there are other things happening out there, and in the next hour we're going to get into some. The whole Russia collusion thing, You know, the framework of that, the narrative of that has been is that Putin colluded with Trump colluded with Putin to screw Hillary and win the election. That Putin wanted Trump to win. And now official thinking is changing. That Putin actually hates Hillary and wanted her to lose. It didn't matter to who. Details and more coming up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to have you here. Highlight of my day, being able to be here with you on the EIB network and the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist and Anti-Media Studies. Phone number is 800-282-2882, and the email address is lrushmo@eibnet.us. So I'm going to get to Andrew in Katy, Texas, but first, one more Trump soundbite. And this is where he emphasizes that there's no deal, that there was no deal, and that if the Democrats obstruct the wall, at some point he will obstruct them. This is in Fort Myers today. We played the first soundbite here right before the end of the hour. Here's the question again from the unidentified reporter. Why did the Democrats say there was a deal at dinner? You pig! Why did they say that? And you also hear some unidentified female reporters, and they just get in on the act here in Trump's answer. But see, here's what happened. AP puts the story out, and AP just doesn't run and watch. AP's in 4,000 newspapers, and thus 4 million websites. And the reporters all wanted it to be true. They want the story that Chuck and Nancy rolled Trump. So the reporter, well, why did the Democrats say there was a deal? See, the reporters think that Chuck and Nancy said they had a deal. And Chuck and Nancy are backtracked. No, we didn't say, well. So anyway, here's Trump's answer to this.
There was no deal, and they didn't say they had a deal. In fact, they just put out a statement. They didn't say that at all.
No relief for DACA recipients unless you get the wall? Is that what you're saying?
The wall, at some point, they're going to have to. They cannot obstruct the wall. The wall, to me, is vital. If I don't get the wall, then we will become the obstruction.
What has to come first, wall and agreement on the wall?
We have to have an understanding that whether it's in the budget or some other vehicle, in a fairly short period of time, the wall will be funded. Otherwise, we're not doing any deals.
I don't know how it could be any more clear. I mean, you're going to have to believe that Trump doesn't mean it, or that they tricked him and now he's trying to slide back out of it. But he even protected them in this answer. The reporter says, well, why did the Democrats say there was a deal at dinner then? Trump said, they just put out a statement. They didn't say that at all. So, Trump's defending them, at least their accuracy of what they said. And then the info babe said, no relief for DACA recipients unless you get the wall. Is that what you're saying? And Trump, well, you heard it. You made it explicitly clear here. So here is Andrew in Katy, Texas. I'm glad you waited. What's happening, Andrew? What do you want to say?
Hey, Russ. Thanks for taking my call today. I appreciate that.
You bet.
And so I just had a question for you. You were alluding to a lot today in regards to the wall. And
Andrew, hey, could you slow down just a little bit so I can hear you or understand you? Okay, slow down just a little bit.
Yes, sir. So earlier today, you spent some time alluding to a lot of conservatives being upset over, the wall, and then linking, the deal and trying to manipulate the deal to no wall, and trying to paint that narrative. And based on what I'm seeing, and based on how I feel, it's not the wall; it's the amnesty portion of it. We have a president who campaigned that no amnesty, they have to go, and then they can come back in, and those were his promises throughout the campaign. And for him to essentially, I know it's not amnesty, but it essentially will become amnesty, and that's what our president's doing, and I think that's what's got a lot of people ticked off, not the wall.
Okay. Now, he's explicitly said there isn't going to be amnesty. But you think that's a distinction without a difference, because if they're being allowed to stay, if they're not going to be deported, then you think they need to be deported. You think that's what he told you he was going to do during the...
I'm not necessarily... not necessarily saying that they should be deported. I'm just saying, if we control the House, we control the Senate, control the Supreme Court, control the presidency. Why are we even talking amnesty in the first place? That really shouldn't even be on the table. And yeah, if you want to build a border wall, that's great. I live in Texas, and a lot of people here.
Wait a minute. No, there is an answer to that. It's not going to be what you want to hear. But I agree with you. We run the House, we run the Senate, we run the White House. Why is amnesty even a word coming out of anybody's mouth? The reason is because the Republicans won't work with Trump on anything. You know that.
Right. And so instead of making a deal, I agree with you there.
The Democrats are the ones that put amnesty out in the public domain.
Well, I completely agree with you there, but what I would say is, use the bully pulpit of the presidency, or fight for midterm elections. You don't necessarily have to get a wall in your first year of the election and concede something like amnesty immediately. I just think that's just a terrible deal, and I think that's why a lot of people are ticked off, because we were promised the exact opposite essentially. And I don't think a lot of people, like you said, the imagery of doing something like that is not going to be positive, but before we even discuss those things, things like border security, our border needs to be secured before we even have that discussion, honestly. And that really needs to be
okay
where we're at.
Now, wait a second now, though. On the subject of border security, it is. The border is being beefed up every day, and it has been since Trump took office. It's not a big story. The drive-bys haven't spent a lot of time on it, but you know as well as I do that the numbers of people even trying to get in are way down. And you know why? It's because the people who would otherwise be trying to get in know full well the attitude of the current administration, which is not tolerant. There is Obama welcomed the world in. The Democrats welcomed the world. Come on in. We know we're the reason you're poor, and we know we owe it to you, and we know that America really should be your country. Come on in. Well, Trump, all during the campaign, no amnesty, deport, no, we're going to have a wall. The message got out, and the numbers of people trying to get in are down dramatically. There's already therefore some major improvement in the overall situation, and it's been brought about by one thing, and that is the simple enforcement of existing law. The Border Patrol has been beefed up, and Trump has given them marching orders. There are areas of the border that have a fence built, and those areas are being built up. But the overall numbers of people coming in, there's already vast improvement in the circumstance, just with the threat, just with the realization that the border isn't open any longer. And you have to factor that in. I mean, everybody's aware of that. Trump is aware of that. Believe me, the Democrats are. I hear you when you say, why is amnesty even on the table? We won the election. Those Democrats didn't win anything, and they're not even close. I totally agree, but the answer to that, look, I hate saying this, because it ticks me off, and it's not fun to sit here and blame your own team, but there's no way around it. It's flabbergasting. It's frustrating. Like I said in the first hour, we're never, ever going to have, we never thought we would have this opportunity. And the odds of it coming around again, therefore it needs to be sustained. And that means elections need to continue to be won. And that means Democrats need to continue to lose. And no matter where the Republicans are, the Democrats need to continue to lose. And at some point, try to bring the Republicans around. But when you have Trump, I mean, he doesn't want to sit there and do nothing. He doesn't want to sit there and get nothing done. People define action as coming after legislation. In truth, there is already plenty of improvement and a bunch of action taking place with just the simple enforcement of existing law. But because it doesn't involve a change, it's not perceived as dramatic change, even though on the ground it really is. The numbers of people trying to come in way down, number of people getting in way down, number of people leaving is way up. And so you have that on one hand. On the other hand, you've got official Washington that's not happy with any of that. I've not ever heard Trump say that he is for amnesty. In fact, grab soundbite number 5 again. This is I'm just going to play, maybe one half of this, Mike. So stand by for the stop the tape. Reporter says, are you open to citizenship for Dreamers over time?
We're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're working with everybody, Republican. We're working with Democrat. I just spoke with Paul Ryan. He's on board. Everybody's on board. They want to do something. We're not talking about amnesty. We're talking about taking care of people that were brought here, people that have done a good job and were not brought here of their own volition.
Stop the tape. It's a perfect definition of the Dreamers. They're kids. They did come of their own volition, a lot of them. I mean, the sneaky little truth here is part of these kids, a great number of them, are the ones that parents put them on the trains down in Central America, El Salvador and Guatemala, and sent them up here unaccompanied. Because Obama, the door was open. The Obama regime was welcoming them all in, and they'd cross the border, get off the trains. The Obama administration placed them in homes all over America. I didn't even process them. If you remember this, they weren't even going through the full processing stage. And there was one place, it was Rancho Murrieta. A bunch of them were busted in there, and people in Rancho Murrieta showed up at a town council meeting and said, no, we don't want them here. And so the bus went somewhere else. Some of them were offloaded. But the point is, the Obama administration offloaded these kids, and they put them in homes. It was all set up. And that's who we're talking. They did come of their own volition to the extent that an 8 or 9 year old could come, but they came by themselves. They were not accompanied. We always suspected at the time that the real intent here was to get them here, knowing full well that nobody's going to start rounding up a bunch of kids and send them home. And the next thing that was going to happen, people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy would go to the microphones and cameras. It's so horrible. All these brave children braving the crime and the heat and the weather, coming in these horrible conditions in those freight cars with a bunch of cattle and cattle poop. And how we can't let their parents in. I don't know who was. So it was a push to get their parents in. And that's what the parents thought. So it was all part of a grand strategery. And I'm convinced that it was. So that's who we're talking about here, is these kids. And Trump is saying, well, I've said it myself. Nobody wants to be in charge of pictures of a roundup of, and now they're not 8 or 9 anymore. They're a little older than that. And some of them are not even kids. Some of them have aged beyond 20 and 21. But the question I have for you, we're not talking amnesty. Let me get the exact quote from the Trumpster. We're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. Would somebody like to tell me the distinction? Would somebody like to tell me the difference? We're not going to grant them amnesty. Nobody's talking amnesty. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. Quick time out. We'll be back with more after this. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. So I just checked the email during the break. Dear Mr. Limbaugh, the only reason we are having this day of news today, the only reason you are speaking about what you are speaking about today is because the blanking Republicans will not do what their party's president ran on doing. This is not Trump's fault. It is the elected Republicans' fault. Sent from my iPhone. I suspect that that's a popular sentiment out there. Now, CNN is having the biggest time today. I've been watching them. They're over here in maybe like a 13-inch monitor over here to my right. It's like a 16 by 9 letterbox. Everybody's squeeze-zoomed. Like they all look short and fat. It's a perfect picture for CNN. The guests, too. But they just having the best time because their graphic on the screen all the time is Trump base explodes over hints of Dreamer deal. Meaning you are exploding out there. You people are near the end. You've had as much as you can handle. And here is arguably what they're using to say that. It's Steve King, congressman from Ohio. He was on CNN today with Allison Camerata. And she's at this very early this morning asking about Chuck and Nancy coming out saying they had a deal. And the question she asked, what did you just hear? What did you hear the president say?
Wanting a big or a large or a massive border security deal, that doesn't address domestic enforcement. If we don't build a wall all the way through, then the rest of it is subject to prosecutorial discretion. His, as was under Barack Obama's, or the next president. So I think something's going to have to be reversed here with this president's policy, or it'll just blow up his base. I mean, this was a straight-up promise all the way through his campaign. I don't think it's unclear to anybody what those campaign promises were, but it looks to me like he's preparing to keep Hillary Clinton's campaign promise rather than his own.
Congressman King, at this point in time in the morning, believed what Chuck and Nancy were saying, that Trump had agreed to a deal on the Dreamers and had gotten nothing on getting rid of the wall for it, and the wall was not part of the deal. And he wasn't the only one. David Rodham Gergen, who is the definition of Washington conventional wisdom. If you ever want to know what consensus and groupthink and conventional wisdom in Washington is, you'll find what David Rodham Gergen is saying, and you'll find out what 99% of them are thinking. And he was on CNN last night after Chuck and Nancy came out after dinner and started chortling about how they rolled Trump and they got what they wanted and a wall and so forth. Here's what Gergen said.
I think there'll be a lot of Republicans look at this and say, this guy may cut a deal, but he gets rolled in the deal. I mean, he gave up the wall and he gave up DACA, and what did he get back in return? We don't know yet, but I can't tell you it's going to be very much. It's going to be some more enforcement. Obama did that. That's not a big deal. So on the deal itself, he got rolled, and I think there are going to be a lot of conservatives who are going to be reacting very angrily.
And they were, because that's what they were treated. Chuck and Nancy come out last night. Trump gave us the Dreamers, and there's no wall. We told him he could take his wall and put it where the sun don't shine. He agreed. Then AP runs their story, says Steve King says, this is not what he said he was going to do. This is Hillary Clinton's promise. And Gergen comes out there and says he got rolled. So that's what everybody woke up to. And that's why, and me too. But since the drive-bys are involved, I'm sorry, folks, I just never, ever do I accept anything. I don't care what. If it's football, if it's the space program, if it's anything, I automatically do not believe it. Not ever. I mean, I don't care what they write about some local issues and all that, but I'm talking about this kind of stuff, national issues of great. I do not believe. New York Times, Washington Post, AP, CNN, ABC, CBS, I do not, and they're all the same. If you miss one of those, doesn't matter. You miss ABC, watch NBC. It'll be the same thing. If you miss the Washington Post, go to the New York Times. It'll be the same thing. We have time. Maybe. We'll try it here. This is Tammy in Naples. Hey, Naples. Tammy, it's great to hear from you. How are you doing?
Trump was just up the street at the mobile home park, but I called to say that my whole entire family, my brother, my husband's family up in Pennsylvania, we all love Trump. We all trust Trump. Half of us don't even pay attention to the things he does because we know that he has a plan. And I don't think for 1 second he's ever going to lose that base unless he did something really out. He's kicking out the criminals. There's less people coming in.
Tammy, time is short. I need to ask you a question. Have you ever trusted a politician before like you trust Donald Trump?
Not for 1 second. I just...
Sounds like it, I know.
100,000% for him. And so is everybody I know. I'm sure there's people, but the ones who really know that he loves people, and I really believe he loves people, and I really believe he's sincerely want to help people.
All right, Tammy, thanks. Go ahead. 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Oh, I said if the Democrats had treated him nice from the beginning, he would have been working with them from day one.
That's a good point. Good point. And got to go on that one. But she said something. We got to talk about this because this is why the media thinks that you Trump people are a bunch of cultists. No. I'm not saying Trump voters are a cult at all. I'm saying the attitude of implicit trust. People don't trust politicians like that, and yet a lot of people will profess blanket trust for Trump. And inside the Beltway, that's foreign behavior. They don't understand that. They don't understand that kind. I mean, they had that kind of faith in Obama, and they had that kind of faith in Bill Clinton. But people having it in Trump, since they think Trump is a bumpkin to begin with, that anybody who has blind faith in Trump's got to be an even bigger bumpkin. But I'm not the one calling Trumpists the equivalent of a cult. The drive-by, some of them do as a means of not having to deal with you seriously. There's also something else that is not a big deal, but it's quite noticeable and obvious to me. And it's a little hypocritical and it's a little contradictory. Here we have all of these Republicans in the House and the Senate, not all, but I mean a majority, who for 7 years ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare. And they promised 7 years. When it was time to reelect, time to campaign, promised. A promise to get rid of it. They even passed legislation. They voted in the House and Senate for legislation to repeal Obamacare, and it got sent to the White House, and Obama vetoed it. They knew he would veto it, but they passed it. They passed it multiple times, more than 3 times, and they sent it up to Obama, and it got repealed, or it got vetoed. Now they run the House, they run the Senate, and they can't come up with a bill. Isn't it amazing? They can't come up with a bill. After 7 years of promising, after 7 years of actually succeeding in writing bills, now they can't come up with it. So they haven't kept that promise. They've had opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity. They've had all kinds of opportunities since January 21st to keep that promise. And now they don't want to be held accountable on that. They're asking, no. They get very defensive when you point all of this out to them. But look at a mere suggestion in the drive-by media, fed by a couple of Democrat hacks, that Trump's not going to build a wall. And those same people go into hysterics and start experiencing outrage that Trump is breaking a promise. And I find it a little curious. They fall for a story that makes it look like Trump is going to break a promise or has broken a promise, and they're outraged. That's the end of Trump. Why? That's the end of Trump's base. Trump is going to abandon it. And yet, they, 7 times, all these promises to repeal and replace Obamacare, and they don't expect to be held accountable to it. I find it's typical of inside the Beltway or swamp behavior. In other words, Trump has no latitude and no leeway, and apparently there are not a whole lot of people there that have confidence. They are willing, apparently, to believe that Trump's been lying to them all along. While, if you want to characterize it this way, how many years have they been lying to voters about their intentions on repealing and replacing Obamacare? Who's next? Donna in Frederick, Maryland. Your turn. I'm glad you waited. Welcome to the EIB Network.
Hi, Rush. My pleasure. As a listener, I often feel like I'm faced with the ultimate challenge because the news sometimes leaves us dazed and confused, and I'd even venture to say somewhat feeling gullible and naive. I guess hence the very definition of fake news. And when I hear about, scary deals with devil Democrats, I think it requires a certain amount of discernment. And it really does, I think, put emphasis on your statement where they want to divide voters from Trump because the left is banking on the effectiveness of their propaganda.
Exactly. And they because everything else they've tried to throw at him hasn't worked. We had the story in the Politico. They've done their market research or focus groups. None of this stuff, the Russian collusion, none of it is working. It just bounces off Trump. They're frustrated. That's why they're focusing on trying to separate Trump's base from Trump. That's the objective now. And it has been for really the whole period of time, but now they're just changing their tactics about bringing it back. But it's not working on you, it doesn't sound like.
No, it is not. I've thought about it long and hard. If anything, it made me want to shift further to the right, not to the left by any means.
That, you're not the first person I've heard say that either. That none of this that's designed to make you distrust Trump and eventually abandon Trump, it isn't making you more inclined to join the opposition. In other words, there's a backlash. In other words, you might say it is backfiring. Now, while all this is going on, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats are out there, and there are a number of them getting ready to run for president in 2020. And they're taking polls on this already, and many of them are very serious about it. We have one of the first snapshots of how it's going out there. Paul Bedard, the Washington Examiner, the upcoming 2020 Democrat presidential nomination appears to be Bernie Sanders is to lose. Crazy Bernie, as of now, is in the pole position. Is Crazy Bernie 80? Is he 80 years old or close to it? If he's not, he's going to be by 2020, and he may be now. So the Democrat front runner, everybody acknowledges, Crazy Bernie is 80 years old. 76. See, I knew it. Even when I think I might be wrong, I'm right. I said he'd be 80, certainly by the time 2020 came around, 79. Close enough. This is a poll that comes from Zogby. It's the Zogby Analytics survey. Sanders has a huge lead over Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren. This is the Harvard professor who made up the fact that she has some Indian blood in order to qualify as a minority, in order to get hired at Harvard. And people said, you have Indian? She said, look at my high cheekbones. That's how you know. She said it, not me. She doesn't look like she has any Native American blood, but she claims that she does. So that's why we affectionately call her Pocahontas here. Crazy Bernie leads her, and then Vice President Joe Biden is I guess in third place, and he's also, former Vice President Biden. He's in his 70s. Nickname here is Plugs, as you well know. But Crazy Bernie is the early favorite. Do you know who the dark horse is? I mean, I know this is tough. It'd be easier if I gave you names and you could multiple choice select. But in this poll, there's somebody showing up with enough support that surprised the pollsters to make them do a double take. Who do you think that is? I'll tell you who it is. It's Mark Zuckerberg, the co-founder of Facebook. You know who's dead last? There is somebody dead last in this, not Zuckerberg. The guy who is dead last in this poll is the punk, Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, who has inexorable close ties to the Clinton mafia. He was part of it. The media loves him. They love the punk. They love Terry. Terry McAuliffe, when he was in the war room of the Clinton days, was every bit as brutal a fighter as Carville and Begala and Stephanopoulos. I mean, he was in the politicals, it was vicious. Now he's the governor of Virginia, and I will guarantee you, he has to be stunned to know that he's in last place. In his mind, as a successful quote-unquote governor, he ought to be in the top tier. And he's not. Just 1% in the Zogby poll. And I know it's early. These polls don't mean anything except as a picture of things as they stand now. They give no indication who's going to eventually get the nomination. It's impossible. There's no snapshot today that can tell you anywhere close. But as of right now, 1% of Democrat primary voters say that they support Terry McAuliffe. Here are the actual numbers. Bernie Sanders at 27%, Joe Biden at 17%, Pocahontas at 12%, Zuckerberg at 7%, Senator Kamala Harris. She's considered to be a savioress. She's the radical left thinks that Kamala Harris is the answer. She is at 6%. Kirsten Gillibrand, senator from New York, 3%. Fredo Cuomo's brother Andrew is at not 3%. He's the governor of New York. Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota is at 1%. And there's the punk, Terry McAuliffe, bringing up the rear. Tim Kaine didn't make the list. Is Kaine running? I didn't remember Kaine's running. The I. Anyway, that's the list in the Zogby poll. Bernie Sanders, the front runner of the... That's something I didn't get to today here, folks. At least 11 mayors have been accused of child sex-related crimes since 2016. 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 4 or 5 Democrats in this list. I mean, there's some not mentioned. Wonder how that hasn't made any news. The Seattle mayor 5 times before they got rid of him. 5 times. See you tomorrow.